visa, you get issued a 10-year super visa. So you have a 10-year visa and it's multiple entry. Come and go as much as you want. But you can only stay here in any given entry for up to 2 years. So you can stay for 2 years, then you must leave the country. What a lot of people do is they go across to the States, they spend a day there, they come back in the country. Technically that's in compliance. You just have to depart Canada for 1 day. So you know you have the certainty of 10 years.
Rights includes what does the Charter of Rights include as a family? Don't they include brothers and sisters and your parents? Like, you're separating them apart. You can only apply the parents for a family visa.
Yes, I'm not aware of any legal challenge that's ever been made to that.
The family includes brothers and sisters.
Yes. To be frank, I'm not aware of the jurisprudence on that issue. You know, someone may take that to the court at some point. What I will say is there have been some alarming trends over the last 5 years. Now, this isn't just partisan statistics. If you go to the CIC website, you can look at the immigration categories for the last 10 years.
Well, I mean, on that point, especially for seniors, the government, as you all know, the government increased the amount of money going to seniors by roughly $1 a day, which we felt, and many seniors feel, is an insult, and especially if you're living in urban areas where housing is very expensive and transit is very expensive. So we have proposed a gradual expansion of CPP that would ultimately double your public pension when you retire. So these are measures that, and they're practical, they're prudent, and they're gradual, but they actually will net out in significant ways for seniors. And I think your point is well taken, that in part what this government likes to do is pit groups against each other.
Yes, very intolerant.
And pit the able against the less able.
Yes.
The higher financial bracket against those who are just struggling to get by.
And one of the key things is recently what we're seeing is you have a government who for the first time has a majority, and a lot of the arrogance is coming out. Mm-hmm. So all the things that were said during the election, we're now seeing the other side of the coin. And so when it comes to helping people in need and helping sort of reduce the gap between the rich and the poor, and to invest in the economy, before the election, if you notice, Kenny was out in every ethnic community. He was going to be our savior. He was out there, he was promising everything. And now what we're seeing is announcement after announcement.
About 2011, there are things the government is doing that we're going to have to apologize 50 years later, such as doing businesses with China or India. So their human rights record is stinky as hell. We just celebrated International Human Rights Day on December 10th. Was that not an eye-opener that the United Nations felt that at least for one day we should stop and think about human rights? There are people butchered in the streets of New Delhi every day, let alone Sikhs, Hindus of lower caste, Muslims in Gujarat, Christians in Orissa. Turn on to YouTube. Look at if the government or the official opposition can digest those videos for more than 5 minutes. That's taking place in India, and it's still taking place every day. A young man the other day was killed, a Hindu kid was killed because he had a name which was similar to a high-caste kid name. And the family was told to change the name. The guy didn't change the name and he was killed. When the government has this kind of a record, and we're laying red carpets for those kind of government officials, and we don't dare ask questions as to why human rights violations are taking place in your backyard, and why are we doing business with them? Is there any talks in Ottawa about that, and that's something that we're going to have to apologize in later years? Our kids will apologize for our mistakes?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to go back to a conversation I had with Jack about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was talking to him about the Kamagadamaru, and one of the things, and we talked about 1984, and we also talked about what's going on in Afghanistan, Iraq. One of the things, he told me, he said, Jasbir, our party stands for human rights. Whether there's human rights issues, whether they're in Canada or whether they're overseas, whether they're in Afghanistan, and that's one of the fundamental principles that we have as a party. So, what we have done in the last, you mentioned a number of cases where, China, we've heard about what's happened in India and other places. One of the things we did about a month ago, we screened a video from Sri Lanka with our friend Radhika. And there were a number of MPs that they're available there to view the video, and some of the human rights violations that took place there, I was speechless, and then Ginny was with me, and we were in tears. And we have been advocating, not only that, our party asked questions in the House of Commons to the federal government, to the Harper government, about talking to Sri Lanka about human rights abuses that took place there. So we're very active in regards to human rights files, whether they're here, or China, or Sri Lanka, and even we need to take a look at some of these human rights issues, even when we're looking at trade issues with these rogue governments. So certainly, I think you can be assured that New Democrats will stand up wherever there are human rights issues are violated.
Discussed in the caucus, in your caucus alone, the Kashmir issue, human rights violations there that are still going on and on. Has there ever been a conversation?
We talk about a whole range of human rights concerns, but I wanted to come back to the issue of trade.
Issue, sir.
No,
Has
but
it never been addressed?
we raise and discuss often a wide variety of human rights concerns, but I want to come back to the issue of trade, because you did raise that, trade and human rights. What we have been saying all along is that Canada's trade template simply does not work. There's a wide number of reasons why we don't think it works. Some of the components are very clearly right-wing and inappropriate, and other countries have excluded those components, like investor-state provisions. Also, Canada has a record commercial deficit, so practically speaking, it's not working. The other component is around human rights, and when you look at the European Union and how they put in place trade agreements, bilaterals that also include enforceable human rights components, that's a model that Canada should be looking to. So as far as specific concerns, we raise them all the time. Human rights concerns from a wide variety of perspectives, and some of the egregious human rights violations that we see, we talk about all the time. What we approach it as is in an overall framework, both for the economy and for trade agreements, but also for Canada, reflecting, the Canadian government, reflecting fundamental human rights as a fundamental Canadian value.
By the Harper government saying we don't have enough evidence. Nowadays with the information age, evidence are not hard to find. Maybe there's stuff you could find from your wallet will take more time to find than evidence from by internet. Our Ontario NDPs literally recognize that as a Sikh genocide, but our federal government yet to recognize it, that the 1984 tragedy was actually a Sikh genocide that has taken place. If my neighbors is a rapist or a murderer, I would sell my house because I wouldn't want to live there. So if we know that the genocide has taken place, even though the politics is sort of trying to hold us back not to recognize it, then we still go ahead and trade businesses with them, whether they're 30,000 miles away or 2 miles away or 10 yards away. What would be the policy of the government of Canada if our next NDP leader is a prime minister? In terms of human rights, do we trade human rights for dollars, or do we say no? Those who are responsible need to be punished before we go ahead with the business.
But I'm saying that the best practices are that you tie human rights and a business relationship together. And certainly the European Union has been a phenomenal pioneer in that respect, signing agreements where they're mutually enforceable components around human rights. And so that is going to be how an NDP government would approach trade and economic issues. There's a wide range of other issues as well that we've spelled out around how we approach building exports, how we integrate the diaspora, the Canadians of origin, of Punjabi origin, of Pakistani origin, to ensure that we have those a very robust.
Facing you guys as the main opposition in the House of Commons in Canada, Canadian House of Commons. With his gone, how do you perceive that with interim leader, of course, we can give some benefit of doubt that, well, I mean, your election is going to take place soon, and the new full-term leader of NDP is going to be on the stage very soon. Do you think that any leader who would take over now would be as strong, if not, would be able to stand up to the challenges in the parliament here, and would you be able to form, as many people had wished, and maybe in 4 years' time, a new government?
Canadian and a great leader. We have an amazing caucus, and you should see the strength of our caucus and the depth of the caucus. And we have a wonderful leadership race that's going on right now. We have 9 potentials who are going to duke it out there in debates. And Canadians, 1 member, 1 vote. That's very important. Grassroots Canadians, NDP Canadians, deciding who they want to be the leader of the NDP party. We have the policies, we have the passion, we have the principles, and with a great new leader, and we're going to have that great new leader, and we have a wonderful interim leader, we're going to go ahead and we will be forming the next government. We're certainly going to work 24/7 to make sure that happens, not only because we want to be in government, because Canada needs an NDP government, and we have to stop Harper in his tracks.
You guys come to Toronto, and we definitely will welcome you there, and as the Punjabi Press Club always do, NDP does great work, and of course we become your mouthpiece, and in many cases, even though we're non-partisan, but it just happens, I guess that's natural. That's the credit that goes to NDP. And I want to thank Rupinder for organizing this day event for